Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD and working on a product to help people overcome these problems because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you.
Hi, this is Karoleen Fober of Karoleen Fober Coaching, LLC. I'm thrilled to share my 8-time award-winning and #1 best-selling book, Opening to Divine Intervention, Expand and Strengthen Your Intuitive Abilities and Spiritual Connection, as well as my expertise in how to leverage your intuition and manifesting skills into extraordinary business, life, and health results. Stay with us till the end to find out my favorite ways to utilize intuition and manifesting skills in business and how you too can double and triple your income while working less by learning my 5-step acute system to turn your intuition into your superpower.
Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
go above and beyond.
They become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast. My guest today is Karoleen Fober. We're going to talk about divine intervention. She's the author of Opening to Divine Intervention, and she herself has experienced more than 450 divine interventions. She's been tracking this and dividing them into categories, which I think is really cool. So we're going to get into the why and the how, and I think it's great when someone, like I said, actually tracks this stuff. I had a friend that said he would track the percentage of prayers that got answered. He was like, it was like 75% or something. So I just think it's funny when people do that. Really cool. So welcome, Karoleen.
Well, thank you so much, Richard. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Well, tell me about your background. Like when did you experience your first, divine intervention, and what did it do to your mind?
Well, I grew up on a farm in Iowa, and so I felt the divine presence in my life. My mom started praying with me when I was probably 2. So I was somebody that really had a strong connection. And as I grew older, it just seemed to be, more and more real. As far as an experience, I would have small things happen, like one of my paternal grandmother, when I was about 5 or 6, she said to me, "Oh, Karoleen has the secret." I, of course, didn't know what she was talking about, and she didn't really go into it. And I told her, "No, I don't have any secrets." And she just looked at me in that knowing way. So, but, I went to church, I went to Sunday school and Bible school. So I was learning about the Bible stories with angels appearing, with miracles, how Jesus performed miracles. So it was really a part of my life growing up. And then when I began to know things that seemed like other people didn't know. So when I was about 8, I was in a school playground and a kid was telling a story about, what happened on his weekend. And he said, "And you know what happened next?" And I just told him what happened. And he was like, "How do you know that?" And I couldn't figure out why everybody didn't know it. So that was when I probably knew that I knew things that other people maybe weren't connecting to, but I went a little quiet. So it wasn't until I was an adult where I began to really, go on my spiritual journey of more direct connection with the spiritual communicating.
Well, I mean, I don't know what it sounds like. I guess you're part of the Christian or Catholic faith. So there's the charismatics, and they talk about Holy Spirit. You don't seem to use those words. Is that what has been guiding you, getting silly words from the Holy Spirit?
Yeah, I mean, I was raised in the Methodist Church, and when I was a kid, and I'd hear the minister say the Holy Ghost, well, that kind of set me on some other. I thought a ghost, and I wasn't really understanding everything, but eventually it all started making sense to me. But it's in the Bible. 1 Corinthians chapter 12 talks about the spiritual gifts.
Well, what do you think when people say, "Oh, that was cessationist"? That only happened with the apostles and it stopped, and don't happen nowadays.
Yeah, well, and I get it, because I was somebody that I was continuously amazed with some of these experiences that were happening to me. Like, how did I know? And so, but as I got older, I started reading more, and after if you have one situation where something happens and you can't explain it, that's something. But when you keep having things happen, and, I stopped at 450 somewhere, about 5 years ago. So now I'm having it every day. I get divine hits, and people are already getting divine hits. They just don't really know what it is, and they poo-poo it. So it's really our culture that has kind of weakened, our spiritual communication ability. And, we really are spiritual beings first. And so we come to earth for, a time period and learn to evolve spiritually and do other things. But it's really our original language. It's, God didn't just stop at the five senses. We are multisensory, and there's really no limits on how, people are getting messages. And I have 84 stories in the book. So there's such a wide variety.
Well, tell me some that are not in the book that were really impactful to you. You couldn't put all of them in there. So.
Well, right. I mean, something just happened recently. I'll be on a Zoom call with people, and I'll be taking notes, minding my own business. And suddenly another person in the group might start talking, and immediately I get a feeling in my body like it's a signal, kind of like you carry a phone around and you get that vibration. Oh, I got a message. So I feel it, and then I become alert. And then in this particular situation I'm thinking about, I heard the words, again, it's no one else could hear it, but it feels like I'm hearing it. And I heard John, John, John. Well, I definitely wrote it down. It was a small group, about 10 people. So I knew the person, and I thought, okay, I'm going to text her about this. And then you get busy. But about a week later, I said, I have to text her about this. And I got the feeling that this was a person that was going to become a client for her in some way or form. And I knew this person. So I texted her and I said, hey, I gave her the message. I was on the call a week ago with you and just so busy, sorry. And I gave her that message. Okay, well, we had a meeting, let's say that next day or so. And she surprised me on the call, and she told the class how she had been having coffee with a friend, and she saw a guy walk into the restaurant with her alma mater sweatshirt on. And she goes, oh, they have to go over and say hi. And, we graduated from the same college. So she goes up to him and they're talking, and he said, well, what are you doing and all this? And she said, she's a coach. And he said, oh, I think my wife would want to hire you. And so they got their information, and she said, what's your name? And he said, John.
Just once or 3 times? What do you mean?
Well, before this all happened, when I was in the class with her, this is a week or two before it actually happened. When she started talking in the class, I got a message for her, and the message was John, John, John. And then I told her to be on the lookout for a John, because it had the sense of it that he would have something to do with becoming a client. In some way or another, through this man's name, John, she was probably going to be getting a client. So then a week later.
I thought it was like, you said it 3 times. I thought someone said it to her 3 times for some reason. The focus in the wrong.
Yeah, the guy she was talking to, when they were exchanging the information to connect, because his wife he thought, my wife should hire you. She got his name and number, and his name was John. So that's the connection. So these things happen all the time. And when you are really open to them, that's where it really gets interesting. So part of my work is to really, and why, part of the reason I wrote the book was to really give lots of experiences so people could relate, because you're all having experiences like this, but you call it a coincidence, you call it weird, and then you just get busy. You might tell your spouse, you might tell a friend, but it just gets lost. And yet everybody has a spiritual team. You're getting information all the time, but most people are ignoring it. So I try to help people activate this spiritual partnership that's really your birthright. And then once that starts happening and we get everything open and the message are coming, then the next question on the higher level that I work with business clients on, is how to leverage it.
Well, how do people experience it? First of all, you seem to hear it audibly in your head, but some people, I guess, get a prompting, like an urge or a dream.
Yes. Well, and there really are, the six senses, which is, seeing. I see things. I hear things. Most people feel things. So it's coming through your body. This is an electromagnetic divine energy system that God has created for us all to live in. And science is now catching up and proving all of that. So we know that. And so we're electromagnetic beings. We're made up of all these systems. We have a breathing system. It's all connected. We have a brain system. And so the messages just are always coming in. It's are we open to it? And if you don't believe something, it could be right in your face and you'd say, no, that's not it. It's like, no, I don't see it. So our brains are very sensitive, and our beliefs are even that they kind of dictate everything. So if you don't believe in it and you're skeptical, you're probably getting as many messages as everyone else, but you're not open to it. So you're not necessarily seeing it. It's more on the back burner. So I try to help people bring it to the forefront as maybe the most important information you'll ever get. So how it comes to us, so many ways. I mean, it can come to us in negative experiences that you've even written a little bit about. So we have experiences, and then there's even messages through whether it's a good experience or a bad experience, and then what we can do with it. So it's, we can have premonitions, and everybody's having premonitions. They just aren't, they're not calling them premonitions. They're just going, why did I get that weird idea? And I've had people say, well, Karoleen, you must be the most, imaginative person in the world. And I go, well, I mean, thank you, but no, I'm just, the station is on for me. I'm expecting it. I'm looking for it because it's been there so often. And when you activate it, it's like a radio channel. It's open. It's open for everyone, but if you don't think it's there, that's why I take them through the 5-step acute system, where you have to accept that this is real. I mean, they were having angel experiences in the Bible all those years ago. This isn't new. It's just, whether there's even people that say, oh, well, it only happened in the Bible. I go, no, it's happening all the time. And if you talk to grandparents or parents, little children will say they talk to grandma, or they talk, to a deceased loved one. So this is getting to be more and more normal and talked about and accepted, which is that first step, accepting that this is real. The second step in the acute system is to claim it for yourself and stop saying, well, only Karoleen can do it. Okay, we all can do it. But the first time you get on a bike, it's probably going to be a little wobbly if you haven't, reactivated.
What does this mean, though? So when people get, a thought in their head or a prompt, do they think it's just their own brain? Like, how do they know if it's God speaking to them or it's just their own mind coming up with stuff?
Well, that's the perfect question. And this is where people get too analytical. And most people do spend 95% of the time in that analytical left brain and only 5% into their right brain, which is the intuitive side. And so you want to kind of balance it out. You want to have more more of a 50-50. And we need to stop being so skeptical. That will just stop you in your tracks. So it's kind of like someone says, here, I've got a glass of orange juice for you. But if you think, well, no, that's not orange juice. If you are so committed that it isn't there, I mean, how can anybody, persuade you? You can try tasting it, but you could still say, that's not orange juice to me. So it's kind of a opening and acceptance. And they've done studies, and they said that somewhere between the ages of 6 and 8, so pretty young, it's about the time where you're going to school, you're learning how to read, you're learning how to do math, beginning math. There's so much to learn as a kid. And then if our culture doesn't support us, then it just gets like the lost language. So if you were born in another country, let's say Russia, then somehow you moved to the United States when you were a kid and everybody stopped speaking Russian, you would have learned it and you would have had that beginning understanding of it, but then no more using of it, no more communicating with it. And they would say you lost the language, which because you didn't use it, it's like muscles atrophy. If you're ill and you're in a hospital bed and you're not moving, one of the first things they're going to try to do is get you up and using those muscles again so you don't lose their ability. So it's just a language communication like this is the same thing, if that helps.
Well, I don't know. What kind of prompts do people get that they ask you about? Yeah, to help them decipher whether it's, Holy Spirit or just their brain doing it, whether it's a good or a bad prompt.
Yeah. Well, and discernment is important too, but every single message I've ever received has been very helpful in the long run. So your spiritual guidance team is going to help you. This is about guiding you, supporting you, and loving you. And if there is something negative, well, that to me is more the take of, I'm not saying that it's not going to happen, but it's never happened to me. And I always, in my communicating with my spiritual team, I said, look, I'm just interested in helpful, divine information. So that pretty much takes care of it. But, instead of questioning what it is or where it's coming from, it's actually very helpful to say, well, what was the message? So did you hear something? Did you feel it? Did you feel like you know it? So did you know it? Did you feel it? Did you hear it? Did you see something? How did it come to you? And to know that there's lots of different ways. And I've kind of named different ways that it comes. If you're sleeping, most people, the messages come, most people tell me that they've had dreams about their deceased loved ones. And those are different brain waves going on when you're at sleep. Well, when you're awake, you're usually in the beta stage, but people that they've actually, done brain scans while a person is doing a reading, let's say your loved ones are coming through. And what they found is that the scientists themselves were quite stumped, but the scientists do explain what was going on. And they said it was as if the person were falling, they were asleep and they were awake. It was like a back and forth, very quick on their, brain scan machines. And it was as if the person was sleeping, waking, back and forth. So again, we can get really deep into what is happening. But I think it's very important to understand that, get the message, like I have a cell phone, but I'm not going to explain it to you. I drive a car, it takes me everywhere, but I'm not going to be the know-it-all on how that thing works. We do have scientists that obviously know, but I'm more interested in what is the helpful message and what does it mean for your life?
Well, what are some maybe common stories, or not your own, but someone has said to you XYZ happened, and you say yes, that's it. That sounds like it's from God.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's so many ways to connect, and I always say, well, prayer. When you pray, you're communicating with God. And
how do you, I think a lot of people pray like a voicemail. Lord, I need help with A, B, and C. All right, thanks. Bye. See you later. They expect that God will do it without them listening to like a response.
Well, it's a two-way street. It's a two-way communication, right? Communication is for two different sources. Okay. So it's designed so that you do pray, and then we do expect a response. We may not know when it's coming, but many people have said, oh, I have answered prayers. And in the book, I talk about, when a friend's daughter was in the hospital, and I got on, I had about 10 friends that I knew or I hoped would be available. And I texted each one of them. I didn't give away details, but I just said, are you willing to pray for this particular situation? And then I did kind of a divine reading. I just connect. I close my eyes and I connect and just channel in our creator's highest divine energy. And 5 hours later, the surgeon comes back in and he said, I have no idea why she's alive. All I could say, it's a miracle. So, there are just so many things you can't really prove, but you can explain the experience that you had. And after I've had so many, it just becomes a moot point. And that's where in the work that I do with people that are interested in expanding their intuition and manifesting abilities, I help them with the beginning tips and strategies. One tip is just to not be so analytical. Like, what's happening? Just say, what did you get? Well, I heard somebody's name, or I saw, or it was like I was in the car and I was on my way in a normal direction. And I just thought, I need to go another way. And they might have, avoided an accident. And so it's just those many times it's very subtle. And so it's a system of really connecting and beginning to understand and feel and understand, oh, it's coming in. I know it. I don't know how I know it, but I know it. And that's, and sometimes you get two. Like when I go back to the John example, I felt it in my body. It was like a direct hits coming in, divine hits, I call them. It's coming in. And then I heard John. So that was like a two thing. But I tell people, pay attention to what thought. Let's say you don't know how to solve a problem. And so you just, you're wondering, how do I do it? And then you get an idea. Well, the brain is working in this, divine energetic system, and it's computing information all the time. So I'm not so controlling as, oh, well, that was your imagination. Well, guess what? Who gave us the ability to imagine? Well, I'm pretty sure that's our creator too. And I did have somebody that seemed quite stubborn about this. And they were like, why is it happening for you? Why isn't it happening for me? I said, well, I'm open to it. And this person seemed to be very non-open to it. And she was almost angry, about it. And I said, you mean to tell me you've never had anything you can't explain that was kind of miraculous? And at first it was no. And I said, I've never met anyone that if we really talked, that you haven't had something miraculous happen for you, divine intervention, where it led to something that was so kind of a miracle. So I confronted her and I said, I don't buy it. I said, I think everybody has. And I think you have too. You're not remembering it. And so I just got quiet and she kind of went through her memory and she says, oh my goodness. And I said, what happened? And, she said, when she was 8 or 9, her mother had sent her down the street to mail a letter, and a man in a white van had driven up, and there was no one around, and he got out of the vehicle and said to her, come over here, I have something to show you. There was no one around, and she said, I heard you are in danger, run now. And she ran home. And so, see, she had forgotten that and not put it together that, oh, she heard that there was no one around but this man, and he wasn't saying you're in danger. So she was given an audio message to save her life. And I told her, I said, wow, I said, this is your lucky day. And I said, when you begin putting these kinds of experiences together that everyone has had, they've just put them somewhere else in a drawer. It's like you can't find the sweater from, 30 years ago. Well, those experiences are there. It's time to bring them up, be very grateful for them, and say, wow, if that happened, maybe some of these other things that are happening are really being divinely given. And maybe I need to open up a little bit and start looking at this. And I've had an angel when my mom was in the hospital, but humans can be angels. Like you and I could be talking. I wouldn't know that much about your life, but for some reason I might say something to you and you go, what did you just say? And then I'll say whatever, why I don't even know why I was saying it. But that's the other piece of it. Sometimes we aren't knowing what's going on behind the scenes. I don't think we're always meant to know it all, but we're given amazing information in lots of different ways that many times saves our life and absolutely maybe points us in a more direct mission or maybe purpose of our life. It becomes very, very fulfilling. I had no idea that I was going to write a book. No.
Well, we'll get into that in a second, but have you ever, so there are people in your life that try to treat it like a parlor trick. They come to you, they're like, Karoleen, all right, what you got for me? Tell me what are you getting? Like try to put you on the spot and ask you right then.
Well, sure. I mean, that's normal. And, there are some people that they'll get a download that they'll know like when your uncle was born and the date of the death, things like that. And so everybody's a little different. It's like singers, some people can do 4 octaves and they're just, like a savant. I'm somebody that I get information that is usually pivotal to your life. And if it means that your great grandmother is the person that needs to actually bring it forth and that it's important for you to know that it was that particular person and they say it in a certain way or they give a piece of information that only you would know. And I don't even know what I'm talking about, that's what I'm getting. So I get information for people that I never know what's coming. I don't always know what it means, but eventually it's almost like a puzzle and I start getting a couple pieces and they'll ask me, why did you get that? And I'm asking the same thing. I don't always know like that minute, but it usually starts filling in. And I had one person that, he was a skeptic and, there's always going to be skeptics. And he said, well, if you don't know everything, then I don't believe you. And I say, well, look, I said, I believe that we're given the information that's the most helpful at the time in the situation for the highest benefit of all. So, I mean, if I don't know if it's necessary for me to know the exact date of somebody's death. I mean, there is evidentiary people, that's all they do. Mine is more about messages. And how is this going to deliver a message to someone that's been thinking of someone? One day I was talking to a client and she was mid-sentence and we were talking about, she had come into a new kind of a transition in her life. And she was trying to figure out what other businesses she might like to do. So she's kind of at a crossroads. While she was talking, I kept hearing the word retreat. And I finally, when there was a lull, I said, hey, I don't know if this means anything to you, but I said, I keep hearing the word retreat over and over and over. Why is that? Why am I getting that? Does that mean anything to you? And I never know if it's going to mean anything or not. I'm just delivering messages, kind of like the mail person. And she said, oh my God. She said, my daughter and I have been talking about how we could do a retreat, whether we just do it like I do it by myself or we do one together. And she goes, we've been talking about that for 1.5 years. And I had just met her. So I don't sit there and try to dictate what kind of information I'm getting. I rely and trust on whatever is coming. And it usually is quite helpful. And if it isn't, I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm just delivering messages.
I got you. Don't shoot the messenger, right?
That's right.
So let's talk about the book now. So what inspired you to write it?
Well, that was a divine message 25 years ago, January 15th of 2000, I had signed up to go to this woman who was doing divine messages, divine readings. And so I went and there's about 30 of us in a circle and everybody was getting their messages and she came up to me and I was taking notes and ready and all that. And she said, oh, you are going to write a book and it's going to be important for the world. And I heard nothing after that. I was shocked and I never wanted to write a book. But when you hear things like that and my body resonated, that's the other thing. What are the key things is whatever your body is resonating with, whatever it senses, it seems like, well, that was important. If it feels or you sense that it's important, it probably is. And this is one of the things everybody is getting these messages, but they're poo-pooing. Like, I don't know why I got that. That's weird. I'm not going to do it. And so we talk ourselves out of it. But I have learned the hard way to, I pay attention and I do listen. So it's just it's amazing to walk in the world where you're given information that is so helpful. And so it's just, there's nothing negative about it. It's just very, very positive. And the one time I learned my lesson, I was driving and I heard the words, "That car is going to hit you." And I'd seen a car in the distance. And I went right to my logical left brain and I said, "Oh, that's ridiculous." I said, "I don't think so. I don't want to slow up," because, you just start talking yourself out of it. I made that mistake. And of course I got hit. And, but I was fine. I had my seatbelt on. But yeah, I asked a gal many years later. I just felt like where I'd been hit and where the car landed. I don't remember anything about that accident. Everything went dark. I have no memory of what happened after I was hit. I felt the seatbelt hit my chest and everything went dark. But I should have been in a cornfield. It's basically when you look at when something hits you. But I felt the spinning. And when I woke up, I was actually on a highway about a quarter of a mile in the opposite direction on the left-hand side of the road. And my car was idling. But I felt the sense that I had been helped somehow in that accident. And then I find out later from a medium that I said, I just feel like I was helped. And she said, well, they're speaking Gaelic. And I had felt that my maternal grandfather or his descendants had helped me. And they were from Ireland. And so the ancient language is Gaelic. And so it's just things like that you just, it grabs your attention. If something is grabbing your attention that you can't explain it, that's a good sign that you were being helped.
Okay. So do you work directly with people that want to cultivate this ability? And if so, what do you do to help them?
Well, I use the 5-step acute system. I help them accept and claim it for themselves. And then we begin to talk about what have they experienced beforehand. And no surprise to me, but maybe to you, they tell me lots of things. They tell me they feel like they know things. They feel like, their grandmother that has passed is connecting with them. Real things that are how this happens. And so then I give some of them the tips to really start connecting and to write them down and to just say, when did this happen to you? Really go back and feel what happened. Did you feel it? Did you see anything? Did you hear anything? I begin to put some of those indicators out there so we can actually bring them forth and say, yeah, that's how that happened. And most people feel things. The second most utilized form of getting the messages are through the knowing. It's just like you know something and you don't know how you know it. And I'm sure that's happened to you, Richard. If you've been in business, these things happen all the time. But then, so I give them the tips and the tools and the strategies, and then I teach them to trust. I teach them that it's in your best interest to surrender instead of questioning it all the time, because questioning is kind of a negative. It's like, prove it to me, that's a negative charge. And I also help people quiet their life, because most people are either on their phones, they've got some kind of noise going on all the time. Well, some of these messages are subtle and it might be, really quiet. And if you're thinking all the time, if you're talking all the time, if you've got noise going on all the time, you're distracted. And I remember my first mediumship reading after my mom died. And she told me after the reading, she goes, well, you're just like me. And I was in denial. And I said, oh, I don't think so. And this is why I relate to so many people that may be in denial and a little bit skeptical, because I was the same way. And so I was shocked. And then I said, well, I don't know about that. But if I were, how would I even expand it? How would I know? Like, you're sensing this, but even though I was having all these experiences, I wasn't putting it together. And I sure wasn't putting together that I would be able to communicate with my deceased relatives. That one was very far off to me. I was totally...
So we're not supposed to. We're just supposed to communicate with the Holy Spirit, not talk to the dead directly.
Well, right in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, it says discernment of spirits is one of the spiritual gifts. Most people haven't read the full Bible. They don't know what's in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, but, I encourage people to look at it for themselves. So, yes, Jesus was walking around healing everybody. I mean, he wasn't like doing a session and I mean, he just saw people as healthy and energetically they transformed. And so there's miracles happening all the time. The other thing that Jesus said, if we're really looking at the Bible, I mean, I love John 14 through 16. And, that was the time period when he knew he was going to be crucified. And so he had his disciples around him and he was trying to explain this to him so that he wasn't scaring them, even though they did get scared. And I mean, the words were, all that I do, so can you, even more. John 14, verse 12, I believe it is.
Okay. So, do people come to you for consulting on how to hear God's voice in their life, or what's your relationship with, book readers and just, like what is your business about nowadays?
Yes. Well, they come for all different, reasons and different ways. Many people are also having experiences. They feel they're being called. I call those people like myself kind of a light worker, trying to help people connect to the divine, because I believe that's what we're here. We're here to evolve spiritually. And I can't believe we're just dropped here and not, without a lifeline, a spiritual lifeline. And that spiritual lifeline is not just praying. It's receiving, the gifts and all of it. So I just, people come to me, they might have an issue. I had a gal that came to me and she had cancer 2 times and she was really frightened that it was going to come back. And so I taught her how to be energetically aligned, because if you're always fearful, that's a negative energy. And it comes down very simple. We have to stop the blocks. And the biggest block is the negativity and the fear and the worry. And I used to be a worrier too, but I really have, I'm not perfect, but I have really progressed and I stay as energetically aligned as possible. So I teach people how to do that and how to receive healing. And then this person that came to me with a cancer, she was all excited and she wanted to help others. So she's doing divine channeling of healing for other people as well. All different kinds of, reasons people come, and it's very exciting because we're meant to manifest. We're meant to live an abundant life. And so I teach people how to manifest whatever this they want. I mean, some people would like to have a companion in life and they just haven't been able to find a person, or somebody is just really struggling with their business. And I find when I started working, I'm a former financial advisor. And when I started coaching other financial advisors almost 25 years ago, there were 3 things I noticed. And the first thing that I noticed was that people were not living and working from their value. If we're really made in the image of God, we should really think about that, how valuable that is. We really should look at that. How do we live from that instead of always, I'm not good enough, or this client's not going to hire me. So I noticed that they weren't living from their value. That was the first thing I noticed. The second thing I noticed is they were not utilizing their intuition skills. They were just, again, acting like, well, it wasn't even a real thing. And I said, well, let's talk about that. And then I also noticed they did not know how to manifest. And so I was a little shocked. And what happens when people are not utilizing these, spiritual gifts, they're working way too hard and their results aren't very good. So, and some people have learned how to do it, but they aren't giving credit for how this all happened. They think they're doing everything. And I say, well, somebody created all this, something created all this. And I think it's a much higher frequency to live with that, feeling of appreciation for the co-creating of what you're doing. So if you're manifesting, you're doing it in this God's divine energy system that was created for us to live in. And so if you're not able to give credit, I find that a block for many, many people. And once that gets unblocked, well, it even gets easier and better. And so the third thing that I found was not only they weren't living and working from their value, they weren't utilizing intuition and manifesting skills, which meant they certainly didn't know how to leverage it. And it's one thing to do. Everybody's manifesting. Most people are manifesting backwards. That's why they're needing to work so hard with puny results. But when you get straight on some of the rules and how it all works, and then combine intuition and manifesting, because manifesting is creating, and then along the way of creating, you're going to get messages like, do this, don't do that, stop doing this, and do this. You'll be redirected. Through the process of it, you'll get an inkling. And some people would say, well, that was just an inkling, and I go, your words, not mine. I would look at that as a divine inkling, because how did you get that? I mean, it's, again, the system was divinely created, and I like to give credit.
Okay. So what's the best way for people to engage with you? Should they read the book first, or, what's the first step for them who want to hear Dad's voice and use it in their life?
Yes. Well, I, of course, think the book is a great start, because you're going to read about so many different examples, and you're going to have a chance to identify, oh, yeah, that happened to me, or something very similar happened to me. So the book, Opening to Divine Intervention, is a great first step. But, some people don't like to read. And so I created a course, because I also coach people, but I don't have time to coach everyone. And this program is kind of my full enchilada. I have everything in it. And you can also get that online. It's my Intuition Mastery Accelerator Success course. And you can even learn about intuition by taking a free assessment on my website at KaroleenFober.com. It's an intuition mastery. It's only 6 questions, and it takes, under 2 minutes to do. And you'll find out more about intuition.
Very good. So people should get your book, I guess, for a start. So can you repeat the title?
Yes, it's Opening to Divine Intervention. And my name is Karoleen, Karoleen, Fober, Fober.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for coming on, Karoleen. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.